It's too cold or I would have hit that puddle. You were wanting me to, but I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do it. Hi, Dylan here from Throttle Company in the shop. We're going to do another episode of In the Loop, and I always want to tease these videos and say, what are we going to pick? Well, look at all these bikes. Which one are we going to pick? But it's probably in the title. I guess that's just how YouTube works. So you probably know that we're doing a 1975 Honda CB360, but at this point in time, we haven't even seen it. I'm going to walk through these bikes and I'm going to say, oh, what about this? Could we ride this? Maybe next time. What about these bikes? What about this cool 1972 CB500? What about this 1968 Triumph TR6C? What about these bikes? Oh wow, they're gorgeous and they're orange. But you, of course, already know that this is the one we're going to ride, which is a 1975 CB360T. T means touring. A lot of people think it means twin. We're not going to debate it. Well, we could debate it in the comments. That'll get me a lot of engagement. Thanks in advance. So anyway, they made two versions of the CB360 in 1975. There's the CB360T, which this is based on. But you notice some things like this fender's higher. The tires are knobbier. The pipes, the exhaust pipes are higher. So, and the side pipe there, or the side panel, says CL360. So that was the other version that they made. So the CL is more of a scrambler. It has these high pipes. They're the cool ones that everybody wants nowadays. For a long time they didn't want them, so they're harder to find. But that's what this bike is. It's an urban scrambler. It's based on the CB360, but it really is made into a CL360. That's really the only difference is the exhaust. Now you've got lower headlight and the fender and the fork gaiters and everything. Those are little touches that someone has done later. The guy that we bought this bike from had it done in a local shop. It's got a LED Lucas style taillight, and then the fender's a little bit higher. Cool touches that make this an urban scrambler, and it's super fun to ride. So let's just get to it. I've actually already warmed this bike up, but it does take a little bit of time to warm up. So you got to be in neutral. All right, let's take it around the loop. So this bike is brappy. You can hear the noise from the left side of the exhaust. As the kids say, this bike rips. You see Nicole out here cracking up some glass. Maybe you've seen one of my earlier videos around In the Loop, but somebody hit that pole with a car and there's still glass out there, and of course we don't want to wind up in motorcycle tires. That would give us a lot of tire changing business, but that is not how we want to get it. So there you go. Listen to that baby purr. It's running great. This bike has got a lot of power. A lot more than you would think. 350, 360. This is very similar to the CB350 that came before it, which they made for more years, so they're more common to see nowadays. But anyway, both those bikes are very surprising with how much power they have. They've got a lot of torque. They're very fun. They're perfect for what this bike is set up for, which is being an urban scrambler. I say urban, but I just saying that because we're in the middle of Columbus, and the roads we're going on are going to be very, regular streets. But it's got the knobby tires. Those are, I think they're Shinko 241s. Anyway, they're Shinkos. I just put them on. I haven't. This is the second time they've been on the street. But they're a very good, inexpensive off-road tire. They look just like the vintage ones, so they're classic styling. They look perfect on this motorcycle, and they function really well. So if for exactly what we're doing here is we're mostly on the road. They're great on the road. You don't even notice that you have knobbier tires on it. But if you were to get into the dirt a little bit and into the mud, you really appreciate having those knobs on there and getting a little bit more traction off-road. So that's what this is. Those bikes, it comes from kind of the hare scramble stuff. The British guys would have, said, "Oh, these boys are scrambling," and they have videos. There's some really cool vintage bike videos you can watch where people take their BSAs and their Triumphs and who knows what other cool British manufacturers that they have out there, you know, driving over the hills and stuff like that. And that's this bike. That's what it's for. There is a race on the East Coast called the Vintage 1000. They also do a shorter one, a Vintage 500, but it's run by a local shop. I think they start in Tennessee, but it's like Tennessee, Georgia, Kentucky, everything kind of around there, Appalachian Mountains, and that guy didn't go. So, oh, now he's gonna go. Okay, yeah, I'll just go on red, not on green. So, anyway, the Vintage 1000, it's put on by a local shop, and I can't remember the exact date, but there's a cutoff. No bike can be any newer than a certain point. I think it's the mid 80s, and you can have components like new components. Like I can get a new carburetor, but it has to be for this bike. Like it can be remanufactured, but it has to be meant for this bike. You can't get a modern carburetor. You couldn't put fuel injection on it. You can't get a modern suspension. You can get new springs and shocks, but they have to be basically for the older version of the bike, for this bike. But modern manufacturing, but not the technology. Anyway, that was a long way of saying they have to be old bikes, they have to have old technology. Also, GPS is not allowed. So you have to use like a paper page turning, turn-by-turn thing. I don't love that rule, but that's their thing. That's what they do. They're trying to give you the authentic vintage experience. And you camp with the guys on the route with you. And anyway, look them up, Vintage 1000 on Instagram. I think this motorcycle would be perfect for that. I would love to do that myself one day. And this is exactly the bike I would take because the parts are easy to find. It runs, it's got Honda reliability. It's got plenty of power, more than you would really ever want on a race like that. It's not really a race, I say a race, but it's an event. And you've got plenty of torque for going through the mud and up and down creek beds, but you've just got, it's great on the highway. You got 6 gears, so that's why they added that 6th gear, is so that you can take it on the road. You can get up to normal highway speeds, keep up with traffic. Oh my God, man, what are you doing here? I said man, but that was a woman. Okay, so anyway, this thing is brappy. It's got plenty of power. Even with those knobby tires, it's great on the road. It's got good brakes. It's got a disc up front, hydraulic disc, and a drum in the rear, which is pretty much all you need back then for a bike this light. I started to say this, but you know, I was talking about the reliability and the power and everything that this bike has for the Vintage 500 or Vintage 1000 or a race like that, or just doing that on your own. You know, Ohio's got plenty of that stuff. But anyway, the other advantage is this is a very light bike. You can pick this bike up yourself if it were to fall over. You also could lift it up over an obstacle if there's a downed tree on the road. This is no problem to lift up a motorcycle this size and get yourself back to where it's going. You can do maintenance on the side of the road very easily. This one actually still has the center stand. Some people take that off for off-road to get a little bit of extra clearance, but this one still has it. I love a center stand. You know, it's my job to work on motorcycles, and I can't imagine not having a center stand. Certain bikes maybe, but working on anything with the rear tire, the chain, center stand's where it's at. So this thing just goes and goes and goes. I think we're in 5th. Okay, now we're in 6th. And I don't have a tack on this particular bike, but they do come with a tack, but they added this aftermarket gauge cluster. But we're just crawling along on my RPMs here. We're going 60 miles an hour, and this bike is not, you know, for a smaller bike, you know, and I'm what, 220 pounds on a bike that weighs like 300 pounds. And it's pulling me along no problem. You don't hear it struggling. I still have plenty RPMs to go. The engine wasn't dying. That's the nice thing about having a CB360 as opposed to the CB350, because you get that extra gear, and that taller gearing and everything just makes a huge difference. as far as your on-road performance. Doesn't really help you much off-road. Really, you'd be shifting more, but you got more selection down low, having one more total gear. It's too cold, or I would have hit that puddle. You were wanting me to, but I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do it. So, another thing that's nice about these bikes is they have kind of a cult following. The leader of that cult, if you will, is Brendan from Common Motor, which is Common Dash Motor. I know because he always says that in the videos. But they have plenty of videos. They have a store. They're out of Texas. I consider them friends. Brendan, I've met him multiple times. He was there when Nicole bought her CB360, gave us some great advice on the 360 and the differences between that and the 350. But they sell a ton of parts for basically anything that's a Honda twin in the 70s. So we're talking about, and late 60s too, but we're talking about CB350 and 360, of course, which in other countries the 350 is also the 250. I don't know why, but anyway, it's the same bike, smaller displacement. They also do the 175, the 200, and they do the 450 and the 500T. They have some parts that are interchangeable for the four-cylinder bikes, but mostly they focus on twins. And it's great because they have plenty of videos on how to do the timing, how to do the valves, valve adjustment, basic maintenance stuff. They've started doing a build series and stuff, so if you're into that kind of stuff, getting a bike back on the road that they bought at a junkyard or wherever they got it that wasn't running, it's very cool. They are awesome, awesome people. We are a distributor for them, but you can buy their stuff online as well. But if you're in Columbus, you can come down and you can order parts from them through us, or vice versa. We carry some of their stuff. They started doing their own electronic ignition for the twins. They also started doing mufflers just recently, I saw. Anyway, Common Motor, they're great. And what's really nice about that is there's a lot of information out there, especially on Hondas. You know, talk about Hondas as opposed to a Triumph or something. A Triumph, you really have to hunt. How do you do the timing on a Triumph? Man, there are some ancient videos out there. It's just old mumble-mouth British guys. Very hard to understand, very hard to get information. Honda guys are dorks. They're nerds. They're the kind of guys they get way into the minutia. They want to know why. They're engineering type people. And there's a ton of information out there. And Common Motor is sort of leading the charge, especially when it comes to the twins. So check them out. But that's another great thing about owning one of these bikes is the information that's out there. It's plentiful. You've got a lot of good information out there on what to do, what oil to run, all those sort of noob questions that you have. They can answer those. I can answer those. You can feel free to ask any of those questions down in the comments. But hopefully I gave you a little bit of a taste of what it's like to ride one of these bikes. It's very fun. It's a brappy little scrambler, and brappy and scrappy and very fun to take around on the roads. So that was a 1975 CB360 that looks like a CL360 and just rides and runs great. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.